Alright, hi everyone, welcome to a new video. This video is going to be specifically about terminals. What are these fancy black things that hackers use? What are the common commands that are written here, and specifically the commands that you need for this cohort. There is a detailed video right after this one that will take you through some extra commands that are not really needed but good to know, and I'll also take you through the installation of Node in your machine. This video specifically is going to be a bunch of common commands, and then assuming you already have Node in your machine, 3 new commands that are Node related. Cool, let's get right into it. First thing I would urge you to do is open a terminal in your machine. If you're using Ubuntu, Mac, or some version of Linux, all you have to do is type terminal and it will open this black thingy for you. If you are on a Windows machine, you can do one of two things. Either you can open the standard command prompt cmd.exe. This will not work exactly for this video. What we are discussing are what are called bash commands. If you open the command prompt in your Windows machine, it won't exactly, these commands won't translate there well. So the thing to do in Windows is install something called WSL, that stands for Windows Subsystem Linux. It will basically give you access to such a terminal in your Windows machine, and then all of these commands will run for you. If you try this in the standard command prompt, the commands won't exactly work for you. You will have to sort of change them. For example, ls will become dir in a Windows command prompt. So if you still want to just stick to the Windows command prompt, feel free to, but a lot of these commands won't work there. Cool. Assuming you can open the terminal in your machine, then let's start to write a few commands and understand the standard commands you need to know. Number 1, pwd. It stands for print working directory. If I copy this and paste it here, you will see it says /users/Kirath. This is the base directory in your machine. If I go to my file explorer here, you can see I can go to the /users/Kirath folder, which has a bunch of my, files, folders, videos, things like these. You can actually go one folder below this. For example, let's not go there in the terminal, but if I go to my file explorer and I go to, /users, you will see the users that I have in my machine, which I only have one right now. But if you in your machine have, multiple users, your sister, your brother has an account in your machine, then you will see a bunch of those file systems here. Based on their permissions, you may or may not be able to open them. But specifically in my machine, and if you're on a Mac machine, this is your sort of base root directory. Everything else, desktop, documents, actually exists here. And feel free to open that in your file explorer. And just to show you what a terminal exactly is, open the file explorer actually right next to the terminal. Let me open them one below the other. And this way we'll be able to explore things slightly better. So I have the file system below, like the normal file system explorer. You've seen this many times if you've worked on a computer. This is the thing that I have above it, the black fancy terminal. The command that I introduced was pwd, and it just gave me the path to my current folder. Question is, what is this current folder? The thing is, the terminal is nothing but another interface for you to do things on your machine. I repeat, terminal is nothing but another interface to do things on your machine. What are things? What are the standard things that you do in your machine? You open folders, you open files, you open play videos, you rename a file, you change the contents of a file, let's say a .js file or a .txt file. These are the common things that you do using the GUI, which stands for graphical user interface. You can totally do that. This can be sort of where you usually live. That is how we usually use machines. Okay, we explore the file system using the file, explorer here, go around, edit files, rename files, things like these. But as a hacker, as a developer, you want to spend most of your time here, and this will let you do everything that this lets you do. Let's understand how. the terminal will always be in a certain folder, similar to how my file explorer is currently in a certain folder. You can see what folder you are in by typing the pwd command, and you can also navigate inside and outside folders. For example, in my file explorer here, let me go to the desktop folder. Question is, how can I go to the desktop folder here? This might feel a little confusing. Okay, Harkirat, what do you mean taking this to the desktop folder? I mean, how can I run a command so that when I run pwd after that, it says /users/kirat/desktop. That's exactly where I am here in the file explorer. How can I navigate to the desktop folder in the terminal above? The answer is the cd command. It stands for change directory. Let's try to run this. cd space, if I type des and I can actually press tab and it will autocomplete. Even if you don't want to press tab, you can type the whole thing. So you can be like cd space desktop. And then it says terminal wants to access files on your desktop. So feel free to give it access because you own this terminal. This is the default Mac terminal, should not have anything malicious. So you can give this access to your desktop folder. And now as you can see, it says desktop here. It says desktop here, which means my file explorer and my terminal are in the same directory. pwd, and it says the current working directory is this. This is the first command cd that lets you navigate your file system. Good question to have at this point is, how do I go back, Harkirat? Going to desktop, I get it. You ran the command cd desktop. How do I go back? And the answer is, so this is something new now. This overwhelms people, which is you can actually type ... It means one folder before the current folder I'm in. What is the current folder I'm in? /users/kirat/desktop. How can I go one folder before this? cd ... And that just takes me back to /users/kirat. So try to practice this a few times. cd desktop. Now this totally might happen that you don't have a desktop folder here. You might have a documents folder, a downloads folder, whatever you have here. Try to navigate to one of these folders and then try to come back. So cd desktop, cd ... cd desktop, cd ... Cool. That's the second command. Now, Harkirat, you showed me how to navigate folders, but doesn't seem like I'm doing anything useful. What do I do by going into a folder and then coming back to the main root folder? Great question. You can use the third command, ls, for actually listing all the files in your current folder. For example, if I go to desktop and run the command ls, you will see it says, okay, I have a screen recording.mov file here, and I have a folder here called screenshots with a few typos. This is now a good use case of the terminal. The terminal is actually letting you see files. So you're actually able to replace a lot of the functionality of this file explorer right here. Usually, how would you look at the file structure? You would go here in the GUI, look at oh, there is a video and there is another folder. Now you can run the ls command to see, there is this MOV file and there is a screenshots folder. Cool. Now, hopefully you're getting the benefit of using a terminal versus using a GUI. It is that you can navigate very quickly. cd ... cd desktop, ls, cd ... ls. It gives me all the folders in my root folder. So if I'm in /users/kirat and I run ls, it gives me all the folders and files which exists here in my root folder. So I can keep navigating and looking at files by using the ls command. So what are the three commands we have learned? We have learned pwd, print the current working directory, cd, change directory, and ls to actually list the contents. Maybe one more thing I'll introduce here is when you are using the cd command, you can actually go inside multiple folders at the same time. So I can actually be like cd desktop /screenshots, enter. This takes me to /users/kirat/desktop/screenshots. So I could go inside two folders in the same command. Again, I would urge you to use tab in your machine. So if I go back a folder and then back another folder, from here, all I did was cd desk and then pressed tab, and that auto completed this for me. and then SCRR and then pressed tab, and then it auto completed this for me as well. And I did not have to write the whole thing or like type out the whole thing in my keyboard. Similarly, when you want to go back, you can actually merge them together. So cd dot dot slash dot dot will take me 2 folders behind. Where am I currently? I am in slash user slash Kirath slash desktop slash screenshots, which is this folder right here. If I want to go back twice, 1, 2, I can run the command cd dot dot slash dot dot, and this takes me back to my root folder. Cool. That's the last thing I wanted to introduce in these 3 initial commands. Now let's start to make some files and folders ourselves. How do you make files and folders here? Let's say I want to go to desktop and create a new folder. I would right click and click on new folder. This is the GUI way of doing it. We don't want this. We want to learn how can we do the same thing here. So let me go to the desktop folder and let me run the command mkdir. What does this stand for? Make directory. So if I run the command mkdir, let's call it test, then you can see a test directory was introduced here, even though I added it here. Even if I close this and I create another directory test2, I can keep doing this. I don't need the GUI open at any time. The terminal is enough to navigate your file system and also to create files and folders. I have created 2 folders and I can actually explore. Okay, now I have my screen recording, my screenshots folder, and test2, the 2 directories that I just created. Let me reopen the file explorer and let me go to desktop slash test here. Let me go to test here as well. So now again, my file system and my terminal are both in the same test folder. From here, I can create more folders, but that's the easy bit. Let's create a file here. Let's run the command called touch that lets you create an empty file. Let's call it touch index.js, and that creates an empty index.js file. You can also create a txt file, any sort of file that you want. Cool. So now we understand how to create folders, create files. It will take some time for you to get comfortable with these, but eventually this will become muscle memory because there aren't too many commands as you can see here. Cool. Let's look at the next one. This is called cat. It prints the contents of a file. So if I want to see what exists inside this file, what will I do here? I'll go and I'll say open with whatever, let's say text edit. And as I can see, it was empty. Let me put some content here. Hi there. This is like a notepad text editor, and close. Now index.txt contains some content. How do I see that content here inside the terminal? What are the 2 files here? Index.js, index.txt. I want to see the contents of this. I can run cat index.txt and that will give me the contents of this file, which is hi there. There is a percentage at the end. Ignore why that came. Just the text editor being the text editor. But I can see the contents of this file using the cat command. A few extra things to sort of maybe introduce here is I can actually be in the desktop folder and I can run cat test slash index.txt. This also works. So I can give relative paths when I'm running the cat command. I don't necessarily need to be in the right folder. If I run this, it says hi there. So now by now we have 5 commands that hopefully we understand. What does pwd does? Prints the working directory, the directory that you're currently in. What does cd do? What does ls do? Prints all the folders and files in the specific folder. cd takes you back or takes you forward in your directory structure. mkdir lets you create a new folder. And lastly, touch lets you create a new file, a.ttt, txt. All of these are being added here in the desktop folder. So you can see new dash folder got added here, a.txt got added here. And lastly, the cat command that prints the contents of a file, which a.txt is completely empty right now. Now comes the fancy bit. If you understand this, then boy, you are a big developer. I understood this after 5 years of engineering, and now this is my primary IDE, or place where I edit my files. The V command, or more specifically the Vim command, lets you edit files, but it's very complicated, not recommended for beginners. For beginners, we have Visual Studio Code. Just open whatever program you have inside Visual Studio Code. Do not use the Vim command, but if you want to explore it, here is how Vim works. va.txt will open the a.txt file here, and now you can start writing things here. You will notice if I type something, it doesn't let me type anything. If I'm typing H on my keyboard, nothing is happening. I'm typing J on my keyboard, nothing is happening. The reason for this is Vim is very sort of opinionated, and you need to go into something called the insert mode to actually insert files here. So if I press I is when I'm in insert mode, and now I can type things here, hi there, hello, whatever. And there are like a lot of shortcuts that let you move around, delete like lines, for example, and delete words. It's hard to understand Vim initially. Would not recommend it at all. Just good to know that this is a way to actually edit files directly from the terminal. Now you will be really stuck trying to exit this file, because Vim makes it really hard to exit a file. So with me, try to run 3 commands together. Press the escape button to come out of insert mode. Press colon or type colon. You should see colon here, and then type Q and press enter. This won't work, so try this one more time with me. Escape colon Q exclamation. So make sure you're seeing colon Q exclamation here. Press enter, and then that should exit out of Vim. If you are facing troubles here, just close the terminal and reopen it. That should do it. Exiting Vim is really hard, and even Emacs, that's like another popular editor. So I would urge, in case you're stuck inside the Vim shell, just exit the terminal and then go back to your practice here. Cool. Now, what all do we understand? pwd, cd, ls, make a directory, create an empty file, find the contents of the file, edit a file, and lastly, mv and cp are 2 commands that are good to know. As the name suggests, what do you think mv will do? It will let you move files from one folder to another. So how do I do this in the GUI? I pick this up and drag it to the new folder. How can I do the same thing inside the terminal? So let me go to the desktop folder again. Let me touch a new file here called a.txt, or maybe let's call it a2.txt. I have a2.txt here. Let me try to edit it. I would urge you to not edit it if you're getting confused in Vim. But let me edit it here inside my Vim, a2.txt. Hi there. Feel free to ignore this. You don't have to use it. Feel free to open this in a different editor and edit it from there. Now that I've edited the file, let me see the contents by printing cat a2.txt. Why don't I see anything? I don't see anything because I did not save it. So in Vim, while you're exiting, if you exit by typing colon Q exclamation, it does not save your file. It is the same as exiting without saving. If you want to save it, you have to actually type escape colon WQ exclamation, and only then will it save your file. Again, you don't have to worry about this. Just open this in a text editor like TextEdit or VS Code and edit this file there. Now that I have edited it and actually saved it, now if I cat it, I see I here, which means it's working as expected. Now I need to move this inside the new dash folder. The way to do that is mv a2.txt and then where I want to move it, which right now it is new dash folder. Again, it can be recursive. You can add a longer path here, but since I just want to move it from here to here, this is the command that I will run. I press enter, and as you can see, the file has reached new folder, the folder where I moved it. I can also move a folder inside another folder. How would I do that here? Just drag it here. How would I do that here? mv new dash folder to test2. As you can see, test2 now has new dash folder. I was able to move it directly from here. Now can you see the power? How would I move test from here to test2 / new folder? I would have to first copy this from here to here and then copy this from here to here. I had to take 2 steps. But how can I do it here? I can simply be like mv test2 / new folder. That will take this from here to inside 2 folders. Test2 new folder. Here is where it got moved. So this is one of many benefits of using terminals. It's much faster, as you can see, to move files around. This is actually a very small benefit. There are other ways in which this makes you 100 times faster than this. But let's not get into those complicated use cases just yet. Right now, the goal is that you understand all of these commands. The last one that is left is cp, which can you guess what it does? If you understand mv, I hope you can just guess what cp does. It lets you copy files. So let me create an empty file here, a3.js. Let me folder. So I have a3.js here in desktop. That's where I'm currently at in this terminal. Let me run the command cp a3.js test2. And can you guess what will happen? It will copy this file here. It will not move it, which is why I see it here as well. And I see it here as well. Lastly, let's try to copy a folder into another folder. So I'm going to create a folder here, call it test3. And let me try to move test3 inside test2. cp test3 test2. Now notice something. When I press enter, it says test3 is a directory, not copied. So when you're copying one folder to another, since you need to, recursively copy a few things, cp expects you to pass in something called a flag called -r, which basically stands for recursive. And if I run this, you will see test3 moves from here. Not moves, it gets copied from here to here. So when you're copying over folders, then you need to pass in the -r flag. If you're copying over a file, then you don't need to. Then you can simply run cp whatever a.txt into the final directory that you want to move it in. Cool. These 9 are the first set of commands you need to know, which are unrelated to Node, or another thing that I probably want to introduce in a future video very soon, which is Git. So these 4 are completely separate. To run these 4 commands, you actually need a few things installed in your machine, specifically Node for these 3 and Git for this. But before that, if you have a raw, new, fresh installation of Ubuntu in your machine, these commands are commands you need to be comfortable with at the very least. Again, after this, there is another video that goes into more depths of number 1, how can you install Node for these commands? And number 2, some extra commands like you'll see grep there. And it'll also go into a little bit of depth into how you can use, add some flags to ls to see a better file directory structure. But what we've learned is good enough for you to navigate files and folders, at least for the next few weeks. Cool. This is sorted. Let me introduce the Node related commands that I was talking about. So here there is a big assumption. Okay, you already have Node installed in your machine. If you don't, then these commands will not work for you. And for that, I would urge you to go to the next video where Elisha is explaining Bash a little bit more, and also how to install Node on your machine. Also, generally just Google this. It's very easy to Google how to install Node on your machine. I would urge you to use something called NVM to install it. Even if you don't use NVM, it is fine. I can actually, let's skip this command. NPM and Node are the 2 important commands to know. NVM, the thing that I just showed you, stands for Node Version Manager, which lets you install Node in your machine using this command. But there are other ways to install Node on your machine. For example, if I was to do it today, I would just Google how to install Node on a Mac, because I'm on a Mac. And then, just try to look at the first result here and copy the commands that it gives me. Maybe I'll go to the second one. There we go. Download the node package using the package installer. Now, seriously, why is this so bad? There's an ad. There we go. So install it using the package installer. Where is it though? I mean, I would just, there you go, Node.js downloads page. So I would go here and then I would download the latest, whatever macOS binary on ARM64 because this is the architecture I'm on, and then install it. You can, one way to do it is just install it for your Windows machine or whatever, or use something called NVM. So try to search for how to install it on a Mac or Windows using NVM, and it'll give you the steps to do it using the Node version manager. This is also covered in detail in the next video, in which we're covering Bash a little bit more and installation of Node. Cool. Assuming you already have this, the two commands you need to sort of be very comfortable with is the first command is called node node. If you press enter here, if you see an error after this, it means you don't have Node installed in your machine currently. But if you don't see an error, you will see something like this. And this is what's called a shell. I can actually start to write JavaScript code here. For example, I can be like, let a equal to 2 and then console.log a, and that logs 2 onto the screen. This is another way for you to just, test Node.js code locally and run it line by line. I can exit out of this by pressing Command C. As you can see, the first time I pressed it, it says to exit, press Command C again. And I pressed Command C again, and I was able to exit from the Node shell back to my normal Bash shell. And here again, I can run the ls command, for example, and other commands. So what is the command that we learned about? Node. What does it do? If you run just Node, it gives you a playground to run Node code. So where a equal to 2, console.log a, things like these, and also gives you the final output. You can exit out of it. By the way, I'm pressing Command K, or you can type clear to, actually clear your terminal. Maybe I'll add that as a command here. And now we have Node. Another thing that Node lets you do is let me create an empty file here. So touch a.js. Let me edit this file here. Now I'm going to edit it in Vim. You can edit it in VS Code. va.js console.log. Hi there. And now I'm going to save and exit it. So escape :WQ enter. Now that I have this file, let me see the contents of it one more time. Cat a.js gives me console.log hi there. I can also use the node command to actually run this specific file. So if I run node a.js, I see hi there here. This is similar to me being on Replit and clicking on the play button. So if I go to Replit, select Node.js, if I type console.log hi there here, when I click on the play button here, whatever happens to actually, compile and run this code and hi there getting printed here, the same thing is happening when I use the node command locally. So this is the command that we sort of need to be very comfortable with in the weeks to come, because this lets you run a JavaScript files, and we are going to write a lot of JavaScript files, hopefully locally. So node is the command you need to be comfortable with. After you've written your JavaScript file, this lets you compile the file and run it locally. So make sure you're able to run a JavaScript file, simple hi there file locally, and you see the output. Lastly, another sort of command I wanted to introduce was npm. Now this stands for Node Package Manager. Let me give you a high level of what this is and why we need it. But eventually, as we go more into backend this week in offline videos, I'll share more about what this specific command lets you do. So high level, the world sort of has a lot of what are called libraries. Whenever you are on your Mac machine, or whatever Windows machine, you write some JavaScript code, right? You create an index.js file, you try to start to write code in it. A lot of times your index.js file will require something very complex. For example, if you remember, we used an FS library to access the file system, and I little bit introduced Express last week. These, specifically Express here, is what's called an external dependency. What does this mean? It basically means that Express has been written by some other people. It does not exist on my Mac. It exists on some other place, the place that's called the NPM registry. This is a place where people can publish their code. People write really solid JavaScript code and libraries and put it here. NPM, as the name suggests, lets you manage these packages. It's called the node. I mean, technically it has a bunch of weird full forms, but the one that we are going with here in this course is Node Package Manager. So what are the things that are present here? They are packages. Express is a package, and the way to bring it in your machine is by running the command npm install express. When I run this command, you will see a new folder gets created called node_modules, which has a bunch of things now. But one important folder that you will see here is Express. Hadkirat, where did everything else come from? We will discuss soon as we get more into this thing called the package.json, which is another file that you can see suddenly came up here. But what is the command we need to be comfortable with? npm. And specifically, what is the full command that we need to sort of write a lot as the course proceeds? It is going to be npm install and the name of a dependency. Now there are 1,000 libraries out there. Express is just one of them. To bring any of these locally, you need to run these commands. So for example, let's say there's another popular library. What can I think of? Node library to array functions. So let's say I'm trying to find a library that lets you do, there you go. Let's say there is a package out there called array. And this is usually the URL that you go to actually look at the packages that people all around the world have created. For example, Express also you'll find here only. If I go to npmjs.com/package/express, that shows me the current version of Express that's out there. Nice documentation. You can see weekly so many people are downloading this. This is the latest version, which basically means the developers of Express keep updating it. This is the license that's associated with this specific library. License basically represents who can use it. Can you use it for business purposes or not? Things like these. So this is a page where you can see these packages. The way to bring these packages locally is running the command npm --install the name of the project. For example, if I want to bring array locally, this is the command that I will run. How you use these packages in Node.js is a different question, which we will discuss. We've discussed a little bit last week when we used, FS and Express. I'll also create a video where I reintroduce Express, where you can sort of see how to reuse Express in your Node.js library, Node.js code. But what is the thing to learn? npm install name of the library. That's the high level command you need to be aware of. Just make sure you have it running on your machine. So both Node and npm give you some output like this. And the output should not be npm does not exist or something. If I run a random command here, it says command not found, right? Make sure when you're running npm locally, it does not say command not found. It gives you some output like this. Cool. This is high level, the bash commands I wanted to cover. Again, there's another video after this by Laisha, where she covers some of these in more detail and also covers how you can install Node locally. After both these videos are done, I'm going to release a video on Git that will basically show you what is this Git command and why do you use it locally. It will also introduce GitHub. Cool. With that, let's end this one. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.